Captain Lee Tae-min gripped the railing of the bridge as another massive ship appeared through the swirling portal of hyperspace. The evacuation fleet stretched as far as the eye could see, hundreds of alien vessels fleeing their dying world. Each ship carried thousands of desperate souls seeking safety among the stars. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Yu Seo-jun from his navigation station. "There are so many of them." The Zilani ships were unlike anything in human design. They curved and flowed like living creatures, their hulls shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like heartbeats. Some were massive arc ships, easily 3 times the size of Earth's largest vessels. Others were smaller family craft, their organic shapes reminding Tae-min of the jellyfish he'd seen in Earth's oceans as a child. Behind the fleet, the Zilani homeworld Aquanis burned orange against the black of space. Its ancient star had begun its death throes, expanding into a red giant that would soon consume everything the Zilani had ever known. 3 billion years of evolution, culture, and history would be wiped away in stellar fire. "Captain." "Communications," Officer Park So-jin called out, her voice tight with emotion. "I'm receiving hundreds of distress signals. Some of their ships are running on emergency power. Life support is failing on at least 12 vessels." Tae-min's chest tightened. These weren't soldiers or explorers. These were families, children, elderly beings who had never wanted to leave their ocean world. "Signal all ships in our convoy. Begin immediate emergency assistance protocols. Any ship that can take refugees, prepare to receive them." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as his crew coordinated the massive humanitarian effort. The UES Harmony, humanity's newest deep space vessel, had been designed for exploration and diplomacy. Today, it would serve as a lifeboat. "Sir," reported Chief Engineer Lim Jong-ho over the comm, "our cargo bays are being converted to temporary shelters. Dr. Kim Min-ho says the medical bay can handle the injured, but some of these aliens have biology we've never seen before." Through the main view screen, Tae-min watched as the first Zilani transport approached. The alien ship moved with an eerie grace, its hull rippling like water. Docking clamps engaged with a gentle thrum that vibrated through the Harmony's deck. "Plating!" The airlock hissed open, and Tae-min got his first close look at the Zilani. They were tall and slender, their translucent blue skin revealing the flow of silvery blood beneath. Gills fluttered along their elongated necks, and their large eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire oceans. Despite breathing apparatus that allowed them to survive in the ship's atmosphere, they moved with fluid grace that spoke of their aquatic origins. A small Zilani child stumbled as it crossed the threshold, and Ensign Kim Hae-won immediately knelt to help. The child looked up with those enormous eyes, clicking softly in its native language. Its parent, a being whose skin showed the darker blue of age, placed a webbed hand on Kim's shoulder in a gesture of gratitude that needed no translation. "Captain," Dr. Kim Min-ho's voice crackled through the comm, "you need to see this, Bay 7. Tae-min made his way through corridors now filled with refugees. The Zilani huddled together in family groups, their soft, clicking language creating a symphony of sounds he was only beginning to understand. Children pressed their faces against the viewports, staring in wonder at the human ship's angular design, so different from their organic architecture. In Medical Bay 7, Dr. Kim was treating an elderly Zilani whose skin had turned a sickly, pale blue. "Captain, this is Elder Velthar. He's been trying to tell me something, but the translator is having trouble." The old being's gills fluttered weakly as he spoke. The translation came through in halting words. "Gratitude, beyond. Measure your species, young but kind, others would not. Would not help." Tae-min knelt beside the medical bed. "Elder, you're safe now. All of your people are safe." Velthar's large eyes focused on him with surprising intensity. "Why? We have nothing to give. No weapons. No wealth. Why risk?" "The anger of the Korthak." Before Tae-min could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The lights shifted to amber alert status as Lieutenant Park's voice echoed through the corridors. "Captain to the bridge immediately. We have incoming vessels." Racing back to the bridge, Tae-min found his crew at battle stations. On the main screen, Three dark shapes were approaching through hyperspace. Korthak warships, their hulls bristling with weapons and their red running lights giving them the appearance of predatory beasts. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer 1. "Minjun, they're hailing us on an open frequency. The message is being broadcast to the entire sector." The face that appeared on screen made several crew members step back involuntarily. Admiral Krexnal of the Korthak Empire had the appearance of an evolved reptile. Scaled green skin, yellow eyes like chips of ice, and rows of sharp teeth that showed when he spoke. "Human vessel," his voice was like grinding metal. "You will. Cease this interference immediately. The Zelani are subjects of the Korthak Empire. Their evacuation is illegal under galactic law." Taemin stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "Admiral, with respect, the Zelani requested our assistance. They came to us voluntarily." Krexnal's laugh was a sound like breaking glass. "Voluntarily. These aquatic weaklings belong to whoever is strong enough to claim them. Stand aside, human. Your species has been in space for barely 5 years. You know nothing of galactic politics." "I know enough to recognize people in need," Taemin replied. "These refugees are under human protection now." The Korthak Admiral's expression shifted to something between amusement and contempt. "Protection? From you soft-skinned mammals? The galaxy's newest children think they can play with the adults?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menace-filled whisper. "Boy, I've been conquering worlds since before your species discovered agriculture. Stand aside or be swept aside." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Taemin looked around at his crew, young faces filled with determination and fear in equal measure. These were explorers and scientists, not warriors, but they were human, and that meant something. Fleet Admiral Nam Jae-sung's image flickered to life on the emergency channel from Earth Command. His weathered face showed the strain of commanding humanity's small but growing space fleet. "Captain Lee, I've been monitoring your situation. What's your status?" "Sir, we have approximately 15,000 Zelani refugees aboard our convoy ships. The Korthak are demanding we turn them over." Taemin's jaw tightened. "They're threatening. Military action if we refuse." Admiral Nam was quiet for a long moment, and Taemin could see the weight of decision in his eyes. "Captain, those refugees came to us for help. They're counting on us." His voice grew firm. "Continue the evacuation, full speed to the Kepler system. I'm dispatching additional ships to assist." "Sir, the Korthak have 3 heavy cruisers. We're explorers, not warships. I'm aware of our limitations, Captain, but sometimes being human means standing up for what's right, regardless of the odds." Nam leaned forward. "There's something else. Long-range sensors show Vex Consortium ships moving to intercept refugee convoys in the Tau Ceti system. It seems word of our interference is spreading." As the Admiral's image faded, Commander Choi Da-un approached. "Sir, the Zelani fleet commander is asking to meet with you personally. She says it's urgent." Minutes later, Taemin stood in the ship's main conference room facing Vessel Singer Aquenth, the leader of the Zelani exodus. She was tall even by her species standards, her skin bearing the deep blue markings of high rank. But it was her eyes that struck him, ancient, wise, and filled with a sadness that seemed to carry the weight of her dying world. "Captain Lee," her voice was like the sound of water over stones, translated by the ship's AI. "I must speak truth to you. Your kindness may doom your species. The Korthak do not forgive defiance. The Vex Consortium values profit above all else. Together, they control much of this galaxy's trade and military power." Taemin sat across from her, noting how her gills fluttered with what he was learning indicated deep concern. "Aquenth, are you asking us to abandon your people?" "I am asking you to consider the cost. We are a dying race from a dead world. We have no armies, no great technology to offer. Why would you risk war for us?" The question hung in the air between them. Around the conference table, his senior staff waited for his answer. Through the viewports, the orange glow of the dying Zelani homeworld painted everything in shades of twilight. Taemin thought of the child he'd seen stumbling through the airlock, of Elder Velthar's grateful words, of the thousands of families seeking nothing more than a chance to survive. He thought of Earth's own history, of refugees seeking shelter, of neighbors helping neighbors, of the simple human belief that some things were worth fighting for. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally. On Earth, we have a saying, "A friend in need is a friend indeed." You came to us for help, Aquenth. That makes you our friends, and humans protect their friends. The Zilani's gills fluttered rapidly, their expression of surprise. Other species have made such promises before, Captain. When the cost became too high, they always found reasons to abandon us. Tamin stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the massive evacuation fleet still emerging from hyperspace. We're not other species, he said quietly. We're human, and that means something. Captain Yoon Hye-jin pressed her palm against the cool metal of the observation deck window, watching the incredible sight below. 6 months had passed since the Great Evacuation, and Kepler 442b had transformed from an empty water world into something magnificent. The planet's vast oceans now sparkled with bioluminescent lights as the first Zilani city grew beneath the waves. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" said Dr. Han Sumin, the colony's chief xenobiologist, joining her at the window. Through the clear blue water, they could see the organic spires of New Aquanis rising from the ocean floor like glowing coral formations. Hye-jin nodded, unable to hide her amazement. The Zilani hadn't just built a city, they had grown one. Their bioengineering skills were unlike anything humans had ever seen. Living buildings that filtered water and produced oxygen, transportation tubes that pulsed with their own light, gardens of sea plants that served both as food sources and air purifiers. The kids are adapting faster than anyone expected, Dr. Han continued, pointing to where young Zilani swam alongside human children in specially designed underwater habitats. Yesterday, little Emma Park spent 4 hours underwater with the Zilani younglings. The friendship translator couldn't keep up with all their chatter about sea creatures and spaceships. The intercom crackled to life. "Captain to the bridge. Priority alert." Hye-jin's stomach dropped. She'd been expecting this day for months. The reports from the outer colonies had been troubling. Korthak ships patrolling trade routes, Vex consortium vessels demanding tribute from independent worlds, whispers that the galaxy's major powers were growing tired of human interference. On the bridge of the colony ship New Dawn, the crew moved with practiced efficiency. The ship hung in geosynchronous orbit above New Aquanis, its sensors constantly monitoring both space and the developing colony below. Unlike the sleek exploration vessels, New Dawn was built like a floating city, massive habitation sections, manufacturing bays, and enough defensive systems to protect the growing settlement. "Report," Hye-jin ordered, settling into her command. "Chair." Lieutenant Baejun Seo looked up from his tactical station, his young face pale with worry. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting hyperspace signatures, big ones. Multiple ships dropping out of jump space at the system's edge." The main view screen shifted to show the incoming vessels. 4 dark shapes emerged from the swirling vortex of hyperspace like predators stepping out of the shadows. Korthak heavy cruisers, each one twice the size of New Dawn and bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. "Distance and approach vector?" Hye-jin asked, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. 12 million kilometers and closing fast. Aggressive formation, weapons powered but not locked, reported Ensign Kim Ye-eun from sensors. "They're not trying to hide their intentions, Captain." Through the bridge's viewports, Hye-jin could see the peaceful lights of New Aquanis twinkling beneath the waves. Families down there were having dinner. Children were playing. Elderly Zilani were teaching human scholars about their ancient culture. All of it was about to be threatened by the approaching warships. "Sir," Communications Officer Park Jong-ho called out, "They're hailing us on multiple frequencies. It's being broadcast across the entire system." "Put it through." The face that filled the main screen made several crew members step back instinctively. Admiral Krexfor was even more intimidating than the reports had suggested. His reptilian features were marked by ritual scars that spoke of countless battles. Yellow eyes like molten sulfur burned with cold intelligence, and when he spoke, rows of razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the light of his ship's bridge. "Human vessel." His voice was like the growl of some ancient predator. "I am Admiral Krexfor of the Korthak Empire. You will withdraw from this system immediately. The Zilani refugees are now under official Korthak protection." Hye-jin rose from her chair, moving to stand directly in front of the view screen. Around her, the bridge crew watched with a mixture of fear and pride as their captain faced down one of the galaxy's most feared military commanders. Admiral Krexvor, I am Captain Yoon Hye-jin of the United Earth Colonial Service, the Zelani. Came to us voluntarily after their homeworld became uninhabitable. They are building a new life here, under the protection of Earth and the Colonial Charter. Krexvor's laugh was like the sound of steel grinding against stone. Protection? From you soft-skinned mammals? He leaned forward, his scarred face filling the screen. Child, your species has been crawling around in space for what? 5 of your pathetic years. My people have been conquering worlds since before. Your ancestors discovered fire. The Admiral gestured dismissively with one clawed hand. The Zelani are aquatic weaklings who belong to whoever is strong enough to claim them. They have valuable biotechnology that the Empire requires. You will surrender them immediately or face the consequences. The consequences of protecting innocent people. Hye-jin kept her voice level, though her heart was pounding. Admiral, these are families, children, elderly beings who have never harmed anyone. They came to us seeking shelter, and we gave it freely. Freely? Krexvor's expression twisted into something resembling amusement. Nothing in this galaxy is free, human. Everything has a price. The Zelani's price is their servitude to the Empire. Your price for interfering will be the destruction of your pathetic colony. Behind Krexvor, the bridge of his flagship was visible, a dark, threatening space filled with reptilian warriors wearing battle armor. Weapon displays showed targeting information for New Aquanis, and Hye-jin realized with horror that they were already calculating firing solutions for the defenseless city below. We won't abandon them, she said firmly. The Korthak Admiral's eyes narrowed to burning slits. Then you are as foolish as you are weak. Very well, human child. You have 1 standard hour to evacuate your people from this system. After that, we will take what we came for, and your interference will be corrected. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside the viewports, the Korthak ships had moved into a threatening formation, their dark hulls seeming to swallow the light of Kepler 442's star. Captain, whispered Lieutenant Bay, what do we do? We can't fight 4 heavy cruisers with a colony ship. Hye-jin looked around at her crew, young faces filled with determination and fear. These weren't soldiers. They were explorers, scientists, engineers who had signed up to build new worlds, not fight wars. But they were human. And that meant something in this vast, often cruel galaxy. Open a priority channel to Earth Command, she ordered. Maximum encryption. Admiral Kim Dong-hyun's weathered face appeared on the emergency screen moments later. His expression was grim. Clearly, long-range sensors had already detected the Korthak fleet's arrival. Captain Yoon, I've been monitoring the situation. What's your status? Sir, Admiral Krexvor is demanding we surrender the Zelani colony. He's given us 1 hour before they begin military action. Hye-jin's voice was steady, but her hands were clenched into fists. They're targeting the city directly, sir. Civilian targets. Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment, his eyes showing the weight of command. Around him, the Earth Command Center buzzed with activity as staff officers coordinated humanity's scattered fleet assets. Captain, how many people are we talking about? Approximately 47,000 Zelani in New Aquanis, plus about 1,200 human colonists and researchers. The evacuation ships could maybe take half of them in an emergency lift. And the other half? Hye-jin met his gaze steadily. I would die, sir. The Korthak don't take prisoners from species they consider inferior. Kim nodded grimly. Captain, those people, human and Zelani alike, are under our protection. They came to us for help, and we gave our word. His voice grew, firm with decision. You are authorized to defend the colony by any means necessary. I'm dispatching the battle group from Proxima Station, but they won't reach you for 6 hours. 6 hours against 4 heavy cruisers? Lieutenant Bay whispered, not realizing his comm was still open. Lieutenant, Admiral Kim's voice carried, across the bridge. Sometimes being human means standing up for what's right, even when the odds are impossible. He looked directly at Hye-jin. Captain, I want you to open a channel to Admiral Krexvor. Deliver a message from Earth Command. Yes. Sir, Kim leaned forward, and Hyojin could see something dangerous flickering in his eyes. Tell him that humanity gives one warning. Leave our allies alone. As the transmission ended, Hyojin found herself staring out at the approaching Korthak fleet. The dark ships had spread out in attack formation, their weapon arrays glowing with barely contained energy. Below, the lights of New Aquanis continued to pulse in their peaceful rhythm, unaware of the storm gathering above. Captain, Dr. Han's voice came over the intercom from the science section. The Zelani are asking what they should do. Vessel Singer Aquenth wants to know if they should prepare for evacuation. Hyojin closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of all the families who had already lost one home. She thought of the children playing in the underwater gardens, of the elderly Zelani sharing their stories with human researchers, of the incredible city growing beneath the waves, a symbol of what two species could accomplish together. Tell Aquenth that they don't need to go anywhere. This is their home now. She opened her eyes, looking at her crew with new determination. And humans protect their homes. The bridge crew straightened, fear giving way to resolve. They might be outnumbered and outgunned, but they were human. And in this vast, often heartless galaxy, that still meant something. The Korthak ships continued their approach, unaware that they were about to learn a very important lesson about humanity. They only gave one warning. Captain Park Sung-min stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the peaceful convoy of refugee ships drift through the Epsilon Eridani system like a school of luminous fish swimming through the void. 23 Zelani transports moved in perfect formation, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with soft blue light that reminded him of Earth's deep ocean creatures. "Beautiful sight, isn't it, Captain?" said Lieutenant Commander Roji-won, joining him at the main viewport. "Hard to believe these ships were grown rather than built," Sung-min nodded, still amazed by Zelani biotechnology even after 6 months of working with them. Each transport was essentially a living organism, hulls that could self-repair minor damage, environmental systems that adapted automatically to their passengers' needs, and propulsion systems that worked in harmony with the ship's biological functions. "Status report on the convoy?" he asked, turning to his crew. Ensign Oh Min-jun looked up from his sensor station, his young face bright with enthusiasm. "All ships reporting normal, sir. We're maintaining our escort formation with the frigates Seoul and Busan on flanks, destroyer, Gwangju taking rearguard. The refugee ships are staying in tight formation just like we practiced." This was their 4th convoy run in 2 months, moving the last groups of Zelani from temporary shelters to their new permanent colonies. Each convoy carried between 8,000 and 12,000 refugees, families who had lost everything when their homeworld died, now finally heading toward new lives among the stars. Captain Communications Officer Jung Ye-jin called out, "I'm receiving a personal message from the Song of Deep Waters. It's from Little Pelinth." Sung-min smiled despite himself. The 8-year-old Zelani child had become something of a mascot for the convoy runs. Her curiosity about human culture and endless questions about Earth had endeared her to the entire crew. "Put it through to my personal screen." The child's face appeared on the small monitor, large pearl-like eyes full of excitement, gills fluttering. With what he'd learned indicated happiness in young Zelani. Her translator converted her melodic clicking into words. "Captain Park, look what I made for you." She held up a drawing made with bioluminescent algae on a sheet of living coral paper. It showed Earth's oceans with whales swimming beneath the surface, surprisingly accurate for a child who had never seen either. "It's beautiful, Pelinth," Sung-min said into his comm. "I'll treasure it always. When we get to New Aquanis, will you come swimming with us? Mama says the waters there are warm like our old home, and there are caves that sing when the currents flow through them." "I'd love to," he replied, and meant it. These convoy runs had become more than just military missions. They were about family, about hope, about the bonds forming between two very different species. The transmission ended, and Sung-min turned back to monitoring the convoy's progress. They were 3 days out from their destination, traveling through a relatively quiet sector of space. Long-range sensors showed nothing but empty void and distant stars. That peaceful moment shattered when alarms began screaming throughout the ship. "Multiple hyperspace signatures," Ensign O shouted, his voice cracking with sudden panic. Large vessels, dropping out of jump space directly ahead of the convoy. The main view screen flashed with the brilliant light of hyperspace portals tearing open. 3 massive shapes emerged from the swirling vortexes, Korthak battleships, each one 3 times the size of the human escort vessels. Their dark hulls were scarred from countless battles, and their weapon arrays were already glowing with deadly energy. Battle stations, Sungmin commanded, his training taking over even as his heart raced. All ships, assume defensive positions. Around the convoy. But even as the words left his lips, he knew it was hopeless. 3 battleships against 4 escort vessels. The math was brutally simple. The Korthak had come prepared for war. "Sir, they're not responding to any communications," reported Jung Ye-jin, her voice tight with fear. "They're just charging weapons." Through the chaos of alarms and shouted orders, Sungmin could see the refugee ships beginning to panic. The organic vessels started to pulse with different colors, fear patterns he'd learned to recognize. Some began to scatter, their inexperienced civilian pilots forgetting formation discipline in their terror. "All ships, protect the civilians." Sungmin broadcast on all frequencies. "Seoul and Busan, take the flanks. Gwangju, cover the rear transports." The lead Korthak battleship, a massive Predator-class vessel called the Iron Talon, opened fire without warning. Streams of plasma energy lanced across space, striking the refugee ship Song of Deep Waters directly amidships. The Zalani transport didn't just explode, it died. The bioluminescent patterns along its hull flared once in what looked like a scream of pain. Then the entire ship came apart in a cascade of organic debris and freezing atmosphere. 3,000 Zalani civilians, including families Sungmin had come to know personally, were snuffed out in an instant. "No!" Ensign O cried out, his hands shaking as he watched the sensor readings. "Captain, I'm reading no survivors. The ship, it's completely gone." Before anyone could process the horror, the Korthak ships fired again. The peaceful current, carrying nearly 4,000 refugees, took multiple hits along its length. Sungmin watched in helpless rage as sections of the living ship began to die, their bioluminescent patterns fading to black as the vessel broke apart. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted. But the refugee ships were too slow, too peaceful in their design. They had been grown for transportation and comfort, not war. A third explosion lit up space as the Gentle Tide, one of the smaller family transports, simply vanished under focused fire from all 3 battleships. 800 more lives extinguished in the cold vacuum of space. The human escort ships fought back desperately, their missiles and energy weapons striking the massive Korthak vessels, like insects attacking giants. The destroyer Gwangju managed to score several hits on the Iron Talon's shields, but the battleship barely seemed to notice. "Sir," Navigation Officer Kim Tae-ho called out from his station, "we're taking heavy fire, hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. The Defiant shuddered under the impact of Korthak plasma cannons. Sungmin gripped his chair as the lights flickered and the artificial gravity momentarily failed. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep their ship fighting, even as more refugee vessels died around them. "Captain," Jung Ye-jin's voice was thick with tears. "Admiral Krexivor is broadcasting on all frequencies. He wants everyone in the galaxy to hear this." The scarred face of the Korthak admiral filled screens throughout the system, not just on the human and Zalani ships, but being transmitted to every world, every station, every vessel within range. His yellow eyes burned with savage satisfaction as he spoke. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge Korthak supremacy." His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The humans promised to protect these aquatic weaklings. Where is that protection now?" He gestured with one clawed hand toward the expanding debris fields. "The humans cannot protect you. They are soft, weak mammals who play at being warriors. Weakness is not tolerated in this galaxy." Behind Krexvor, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity as his crew targeted the remaining refugee ships. Sungmin could see the tactical displays showing dozens more Zalani transports marked for destruction. The Admiral continued his broadcast, his voice filled with cold pleasure. "To all species watching, this is what happens when you trust in human promises. They will abandon you when the cost becomes too high. They will watch you die rather than face real warriors." In that moment, Sungmin thought of all the faces he would never see again. little Pelinth with her drawings and endless questions, Elder Morthek, who had taught him about Zelani poetry and the songs of deep water, vessel singer Aquenth's daughter, who had been aboard the peaceful Current with her newborn child, 11,000 civilians murdered in cold blood, not soldiers, not threats to anyone, just families seeking new homes among the stars. His hands steady despite the rage building in his chest, Sung-min activated the Defiance emergency broadcast system. The transmission would go out on every galactic frequency, reaching every civilized world in known space. "This is Captain Park, Sung-min of the United Earth Navy." His voice carried across the void to listening ears on 1,000 worlds. "Today, the Korthak Empire has committed an act of genocide against innocent civilians. They have murdered 11,000 Zelani refugees, children, families, elderly beings who had never harmed anyone." The Defiant shook under another barrage from the battleships, but Sung-min continued speaking, his voice growing harder with each word. "6 months ago, when the Korthak first threatened our allies, we gave them a warning. We told them to leave, the Zelani alone. We offered diplomacy, we sought peaceful solutions, we tried to find common ground." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute conviction. "They were given one warning. They chose not to listen." Around him, his crew worked to save what remained of the convoy. The frigates Seoul and Busan were trying to shield the surviving refugee ships, taking massive damage in the process. But Sung-min knew that the real message being sent today wasn't about this battle. It was about what would come next. To every species listening, to every world that values justice and peace, remember this day. Remember the choice the Korthak made. Remember that they could have chosen differently. His voice grew cold as the space between stars. "And remember that humanity keeps its promises no matter the cost." The transmission ended, but its echoes would spread across the galaxy at light speed, carrying with it the seeds of something the Korthak Empire could never have imagined, the fury of a species that had just learned what it truly meant to be, human in a universe that preyed on the innocent. The war they thought they were preventing was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Li Wu-jin stood in the heart of humanity's greatest secret, watching holographic displays that showed every major military asset in the known galaxy. Ragnarok Base was hidden inside a massive asteroid in the outer Kuiper belt, so far from Earth that it took light 6 hours to travel between them. From the outside, it looked like just another chunk of rock and ice drifting in the cold darkness. Inside, it was humanity's ultimate weapon, a fortress that could coordinate the destruction of entire civilizations. The command center stretched out like a cathedral of war. Hundreds of officers worked at stations that controlled fleets scattered across dozens of star systems. Holographic star maps filled the air above their heads, each point of light representing ships, bases, or targets. For 3 years, this place had existed in absolute secrecy, while the galaxy saw humans as peaceful explorers and diplomats. Admiral Colonel Seo Hyun-woo approached, his face grim with purpose. "Operation Retribution is ready. All 60 stealth battle groups are in position and awaiting your orders." Woo-jin nodded, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical displays. Red markers showed Korthak military installations scattered across their empire. Orbital defense platforms, naval bases, weapons manufacturing facilities. Blue markers indicated Vex Consortium trade stations and corporate headquarters. Each target had been studied for months, their weaknesses catalogued, their destruction planned down to the smallest detail. "Civilian status?" he asked quietly. "All human and allied civilians have been evacuated from potential conflict zones," reported Intelligence Chief Major Park Yoon-soo. "We've been moving them out slowly over the past 2 weeks, making it look like routine relocations. The Korthak and Vex don't suspect anything." Woo-jin walked to the central command platform, where a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly in the air. Each human fleet was represented by a small blue dot, invisible to enemy sensors, but ready to unleash devastating firepower. The Korthak had no idea that human ships had been watching their every move, cataloging their defenses, preparing for this moment. "Sir," Communications Officer Lieutenant Yu Sun-young called out. We're receiving confirmation from Captain Park. Zhongmin's convoy. The attack has been completed. 11,000 Zelani civilians confirmed dead. The command center fell silent. These weren't just numbers on a tactical display. They were friends, allies, innocent people who had trusted humanity to protect them. Wu Jin thought of the children he'd met during the evacuation, the elderly Zelani who had shared their stories, the families who had looked to Earth as their salvation. "Admiral," Colonel Seo said quietly, "the galaxy is watching. Krexvor's broadcast is being transmitted on every major network. He's making it clear that this was a message, that anyone who trusts human protection will end up dead." On the main screen, Admiral Krexvor's scarred face sneered at the camera as he stood on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, Korthak warriors celebrated their slaughter of defenseless civilians like it was some great victory. "The humans promised protection," the alien admiral was saying, his voice filled with cruel satisfaction. "Where was that protection when we turned their precious refugees into space debris? This is what happens when weaklings try to play with real predators." Wu Jin closed his eyes for a moment. Remembering the day humanity had first made contact with the galaxy, they had chosen to present themselves as explorers and peacekeepers, hiding their military capabilities in hopes of building trust and friendship. The decision had been controversial. Many had argued for a show of strength from the beginning, but Admiral Kim Dong-hyun had convinced them otherwise. "Let them think we're weak," he had said. "Let them underestimate us. That way, if we ever need to fight, we'll have every possible advantage." Now that strategy was about to pay its bloody dividend. "Admiral," Captain Lee Min-jung reported from the Stealth Fleet Coordination Station, "all battle groups are reporting ready status. The Phantom, Wraith, and Reaper fleets are in position around Korthak Prime. Ghost Squadron has surrounded their Naval Academy. Shadow Fleet is locked onto their weapons manufacturing worlds." These weren't the exploration ships the galaxy knew about. These were humanity's true warships, vessels built in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant moons. They used technology that most species couldn't even imagine. Engines powered by controlled black holes, weapons that manipulated matter at the quantum level, armor that could phase partially out of normal space-time. "What about the Vex Consortium?" Wu Jin asked. "Stormfleet has surrounded their corporate headquarters in the Centauri cluster," reported Major Park. "Hunter Squadron is positioned near their major trade routes. Every Vex military asset and economic center is targeted." The Vex had made the mistake of joining the Korthak in threatening human allies. Their mistake would be their last. Wu Jin stepped onto the command platform, his voice carrying to every station in the command center. 3 years ago, we joined the galactic community with hope in our hearts. We wanted to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. We built schools and hospitals. We shared our culture and learned from others. We offered protection to those who needed it." He paused, looking at the faces of his officers, men and women who had spent years preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Today, the Korthak Empire showed the galaxy what they think of human friendship. They murdered 11,000 innocent people to prove that our protection means nothing. They wanted to teach the galaxy that humans are weak. The command center was absolutely silent, except for the hum of computers and the distant vibration of the base's massive reactors. They're about to learn the difference between choosing to be peaceful and being unable to fight. Wu Jin's voice grew harder with each word. "All fleets commence Operation Retribution. Show them what happens when you harm our friends." The command went out instantly, transmitted faster than light through quantum entanglement communicators to 60 battle fleets scattered across the galaxy. Within seconds, confirmations began flooding back. "Phantom Fleet engaging Korthak Prime orbital defenses," reported Captain Lee. "Shadow Fleet hitting weapons manufacturing worlds in the Vega sector," called out another officer. "Storm Fleet beginning. Attacks on Vex corporate installations." On the main display, tactical feeds showed the first strikes beginning. The Korthak homeworld's massive orbital defense platforms, structures that had protected their capital for 1,000 years, simply vanished as antimatter torpedoes struck them. The explosions were visible from the planet's surface, as new stars briefly flared to life in the night sky. Meanwhile, on the bridge of his flagship Wrath of Krex, Admiral Krexivor was reviewing the reports of his victory against the human convoy when alarms began screaming throughout the ship. "Report!" he roared, his celebration instantly forgotten. His tactical officer, a young Korthak named Vextal, stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Empire. Our outer colonies, they're not responding to communications." "What do you mean, not responding?" "Sir, I mean they're gone, completely destroyed. The orbital platforms around Korthak Prime have been eliminated. Our naval academy, our weapons foundries are impossible." Krexivor struck the officer with the back of his clawed hand. "Humans don't have that kind of firepower. They're explorers and merchants." But even as he spoke, the main screen lit up with reports from across the Empire. Every major military installation was under attack by ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with impossible accuracy, then vanish again. The attackers weren't bothering with prolonged battles. They were simply erasing their targets from existence. "Sir," the communications officer called out with a trembling voice, "we're receiving a transmission. It's directed specifically at you." The scarred admiral's blood ran cold. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, and Admiral Li Wu-jin's face appeared. Behind him, the command center of Ragnarok Base was visible, a high-tech war room that made even the Korthak flagship's bridge look primitive. "Admiral Krexivor," Wu-jin's voice was calm, almost conversational. "I am Admiral Li Wu-jin of the United Earth Navy. You've been wondering where our ships are, haven't you? You've been asking how humans could possibly threaten the mighty Korthak Empire." On the tactical displays around Krexivor, more reports flooded in. Entire fleets were being destroyed by enemies they couldn't even see clearly. Ships would appear. From nowhere, fire weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics, then disappear again. "You killed our friends," Wu-jin continued, his tone never changing. 11,000 innocent people who had never harmed anyone. Children who drew pictures of Earth's oceans. Families who just wanted to find new homes among the stars. Krexivor opened his mouth to respond, but Wu-jin wasn't finished. "6 months ago, Captain Yoon Hye-jin gave you a warning. She told you to leave our allies alone. You laughed at her. You called us weak." The human admiral's eyes grew cold as ice. "You were warned, Admiral. You chose not to listen. The transmission cut off," and Krexivor found himself staring at tactical displays, showing the systematic destruction of everything he had spent his life building. The Korthak Empire, master of half the galaxy, was being dismantled piece by piece by an enemy they had dismissed as harmless. Outside his flagship, space lit up with the distinctive blue glow of human quantum weapons as the UES Nemesis decloaked. Directly in front of them, the human ship was smaller than the massive Korthak dreadnought, but it radiated a power that made the very fabric of space around it shimmer and bend. "Impossible," Krexivor whispered, realizing too late that everything he thought he knew about humans had been carefully crafted deception. The human ship fired once. The Wrath of Krex and its crew of 50,000 simply ceased to exist, deleted from reality by weapons that the galaxy had never imagined could exist. The age of Korthak supremacy was over. The age of human dominance had begun. Admiral Han Ye-won walked through the corridors of Centauri Station, her boots echoing against the metal floor with each measured step. 6 months had passed since Operation Retribution, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The massive space station, built at the intersection of 5 major trade routes, had always been neutral ground where different species could meet and negotiate. Today, it would witness the birth of a new galactic order. Captain Shin Min-kyu and Commander Kang So-hee flanked her as they approached the main council chamber. Through the station's viewports, Han could see the fleet that had escorted them. Here, sleek human warships alongside the organic curves of Zelani vessels, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with peaceful blue light. But now those Zelani ships carried human weapons and shields, a visible symbol of the alliance that had changed everything. "Admiral," Commander Kang said quietly, "intelligence reports indicate that 14 species have already submitted formal requests for Earth's protection. The Vectari say their neighbors are threatening invasion. The Silicoids are being pressured to give up their mining rights. Everyone's scared." Han nodded grimly. The destruction of the Korthak Empire had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Species that had spent centuries bullying their weaker neighbors were suddenly looking over their shoulders, wondering if human ships were watching them from the darkness. The key. Council chamber doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the conversations inside immediately stopped. The vast circular room had been designed to accommodate dozens of different alien species. Atmospheric controls for methane breathers, gravity, plates for low-G species, temperature zones for everything from ice worlders to desert dwellers. But today, all eyes were focused on the humans entering the chamber. Han looked around at the assembled representatives. She recognized many faces from her years as a diplomatic officer, species she had once negotiated with as equals, some who had looked down on humanity as newcomers to the galactic stage. Now they watched her with a mixture of fear, respect, and calculation. The seating arrangement told the whole story. For 3 years, human representatives had sat at a small table near the back alongside other junior species. Today, the head table, traditionally reserved for the Korthak Empire and their allies, sat empty until Han and her delegation took their places. General Thexmar, the highest-ranking Korthak survivor, approached the human delegation on legs that seemed barely able to support his massive frame. The 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior, who had once commanded armies across 12 star systems, now looked broken, defeated. His ceremonial armor was gone, replaced by simple grey clothing that made him seem smaller somehow. Admiral Han, his voice was barely above a whisper, translated by the universal communicators that allowed different species to understand each other. The Korthak people. What remains of us? We surrender unconditionally to Earth authority. We beg for your mercy. Behind him, other representatives knelt in submission. The Vex Consortium's trade minister, Zephyr Goldscale, fell to his knees despite his species' natural arrogance. A dozen other ambassadors from species that had participated in attacks on Zelani civilians or had threatened human allies followed suit. Han stood slowly, her expression carefully neutral. The chamber was so quiet that the hum of the station's life support systems seemed loud in comparison. Every being in the room hung on her next words. General Thexmar, do you remember the message Captain Park Sungmin sent across the galaxy 6 months ago? The broken Korthak leader's head hung low. That you had warned us. That we chose not to listen. That's correct. We offered friendship to your people first. We sought diplomatic solutions to every conflict. When you threatened our allies, we gave you clear warnings to stop. Han's voice carried across the silent chamber with quiet authority. You responded by murdering 11,000 innocent civilians to prove that human protection meant nothing. She gestured to the displays around the chamber, which showed the current state of former Korthak space. Your empire is dissolved, effective immediately. Your worlds will be administered by a joint council of species you once oppressed. Under human oversight, you'll have the chance to prove you can govern yourselves without committing genocide. But that chance will be earned through actions, not words. Han turned to address the full assembly, her gaze sweeping across representatives from hundreds of worlds. Let me make humanity's position absolutely clear to everyone here. We still prefer peace. We want to trade with you, learn from your cultures, explore the galaxy together as friends and partners. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing with steel in her voice. But we will not abandon our allies. We will not ignore genocide. And we will not give second warnings. Captain Shin stepped forward, carrying a data tablet that projected holographic displays into the air above the assembly. The Zelani colonies are not just surviving, they're thriving. Their biotechnology combined with human engineering has produced medical advances that could benefit every species here. New forms of sustainable energy, revolutionary environmental restoration techniques, breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics. The displays showed images of New Aquanis and other Zelani settlements, underwater cities that seemed to glow with their own inner light, human children swimming alongside young Zelani in crystalline pools, joint research stations where both species work together to unlock the secrets of the universe. 3 other species have already requested Earth's protection after their neighbors began making territorial threats, Shin continued. The Harmony Confederation has applied for full alliance status. The Crystal Singers want human advisors to help them establish their first space fleet. The Peaceful Garden Collective is asking for protection from raiders. Commander Kang added, "We're not conquerors. We don't want to rule the galaxy or impose human culture on anyone. But we will protect those who cannot protect themselves." Han walked to the great observation window that dominated one wall of the chamber. Outside, the view was spectacular. Centauri Station orbited a binary star system, and the dancing lights of two suns painted space in brilliant gold and orange. Human and Zilani ships could be seen patrolling nearby, their formations coordinated and purposeful. "Some of you are wondering about our military technology," Han said, her back still to the assembly. "How we hid advanced fleets for 3 years, how our weapons work, where we got the resources to build them." She turned back to face the room, and several ambassadors actually stepped backward at the intensity in her eyes. "Humans have an ancient saying, si vis pacem, para bellum, if you want peace, prepare for war." While we were exploring the galaxy and making friends, we were also building the strongest military force this galaxy has ever seen. Fleet Admiral Nam Jae-sung, who had commanded the human fleets during the War of Retribution, stood from his position near the human delegation. "The rules have changed. Species that attack civilians, that prey on the weak, that commit acts of genocide, they will answer to humanity. This isn't a threat or a negotiating position. It's a promise." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as species representatives began discussing what this meant for their own territories and ambitions. Some looked relieved, smaller species that had lived in fear of their stronger neighbors. Others appeared calculating, already trying to figure out how to gain human favor or protection. Ambassador Lim Hai-rin, humanity's chief diplomatic officer, approached the kneeling Korthak delegation. Her voice was gentle but firm as she spoke to General Thexmar. "Your people aren't evil, General. You were led by those who valued strength over compassion, conquest over cooperation. We'll help you rebuild your society, but it will be based on different principles this time." As the formal council session ended and representatives began to file out, Han remained at the observation window. Captain Shin joined her, both women watching the ships moving through space outside. "Do you think we've done the right thing?" Shin asked quietly. Han was quiet for a long moment before answering. "A year ago, I would have said that showing our true military strength was a mistake, that it would make the galaxy fear us instead of trust us." She gestured toward the mixed fleet outside. "But look at them. Human and Zilani crews working together. Former enemies protecting each other. Sometimes the only way to create peace is to be strong enough to enforce it." In the years that followed, historians would mark this day as the beginning of what they called the Pax Humana, the human peace. Species that had spent millennia fighting over resources and territory began to cooperate. Trade flourished under human protection. Scientific advances accelerated as different cultures shared knowledge freely. Dr. Kwon Ji-won would later write in her famous memoir about first contact, "The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. They had assumed that humans were peaceful because we were weak. They discovered we were peaceful because we chose to be. The difference between cannot fight and chooses not to fight became very clear very quickly." On the ocean world of Kepler 442b, in the magnificent city of New Aquanis, vessel singer Aquenth swam through coral gardens where her grandchildren played with human visitors. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin pulsed with contentment as she remembered Captain Lee Taemin's words from so long ago, "We protect our friends." She finally understood. Humans hadn't just protected their friends, they had redefined what friendship meant in a galaxy that had almost forgotten the concept. The age of the strong preying on the weak was over. The age of humanity had begun, and with it a new hope for peace among the stars. The end.